Yeah, thanks for coming along. Great to see you. At last, it's all working. There we are. My first live stream. You wouldn't guess. There we are. Cool. Well, thanks for coming along. Like I say, yeah, it's 9 p.m. here in the UK on Easter Sunday. So we're all full of chocky, all sleepy on a Sunday night. I think it's a bit earlier in the States, obviously, sort of early and mid-afternoon for you guys. So yeah, thanks for taking the time to come along. Great to see you. And yeah, I thought basically what I'd come on live today because I wanted to talk a little bit about online-based learning. I've been upping my game a bit with the whole teaching-based online thing in the sort of recent years, like maybe sort of last 5 years or so. And recently, I've been putting out quite a lot of stuff about my new bass vault thing. So you might be wondering, well, what's he banging on about with this bass vault thing? So I thought, well, I'd come on today and talk a little bit about my approach to teaching and my approach to teaching the bass in particular, and yeah, and maybe get into a little bit of detail about this bass vault thing a bit later on. And I'll try and do my best to keep my eye on the chat here as well and answer any questions you might have. But feel free to fire away with the questions. The great thing about this is I think this will end up becoming a video on my channel. So if there are any questions that you put in the chat, if I don't manage to get to them during this live event, I'll make sure I answer any of your questions afterwards, and you can just revisit my channel and find this video and have some good answers there. So yeah, so what I thought I'd do, well, I'll start off by maybe just talking a little bit about myself. I won't bang on about myself for ages because it's far more interesting things to talk about. But for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Ian King, and I'm based in the UK. I live just south of London, in that kind of area. This year, actually, I've been a professional bass player for 30 years this year, actually. I started when I was 16, working in a holiday camp back on the Isle of Wight, where I'm from. And here I am at 46, still playing the bass and still really enjoying it. Along the way, I've played with artists such as Take That, Adam Lambert from Queen, Tom Grennan, Sugar Babes, Hugh Jackman, Sister Sledge, and many more like that. But where I've sort of ended up, mainly these days is I play in the West End shows. So a lot of my evenings are in the pit under the stage in various West End theatres. I've played in shows like Dreamgirls, The Book of Mormon, Sister Act, Hairspray, quite a few others, and I'm currently playing in Hamilton at the Victoria Palace Theatre, but I'm about to leave that in a few weeks. Actually, I'm going to go and do a Disney show called Hercules, which is coming in to the Theatre Royal Drury Lane. So I'll be there. Really looking forward to getting stuck into that. Oh, great! Wilco's back. Hello, Wilco. Nice to see you. Yeah, cool. So that's kind of a little bit about myself. I'm a professional bass player, and I do a lot of reading gigs. That's kind of my thing. And yeah, in the past few years, like I say, I've been upping my game in the online teaching kind of area. Basically, it came about because during the pandemic, so kind of 2020, 5 years ago now, Chris May, who's the man behind the Overwater basses, introduced me to Scott Devine of Scott's Bass Lessons, who you probably heard of. And Scott was looking for people to make more content for his ever-growing platform. So he needed someone to make some courses. So he gave me the task of creating the soul and R&B learning pathway and the funk learning pathway. So they're a kind of bunch of courses back to back, which get progressively harder. And you look into all the subgenres of soul and R&B and funk, obviously. So they're really fun to get involved in, and that's sort of a real labour of love for me. I really poured everything into those courses, creating backing tracks and everything, and these songs that illustrated what I was showing. So, I really got the bug for it at that point. Subsequent to that, Scott asked me to do quite a lot of coaching. So he puts out these accelerator courses. So I became one of the coaches, coaching people through the Jazz Accelerator, the Slap Accelerator, and the Fretboard Accelerator. So I did quite a lot of coaching over those next few years. We've got someone here. Is it Ariel saying a Take That fan here? Oh, nice one. Cool. Well, I played. He's just asking which era. It was very recently. I played in a New Year's Eve gig, which goes out on ITV, and they were the headline act on that. So I was in a house band, and we got to play a couple of tunes with them for that, which was great fun. So back to what I was talking about. So yeah, I did quite a bit of coaching for Scott's website, and coming to 2024, so last year, um, he gave me a year's work working on this thing called live class. So it was a project he put out for 1 year, which was 16 different types of classes with various different tutors, live ones each week. And I was given the task of doing the funk class and also one called listening club. And it's actually those two classes that I've kind of amalgamated, and I've sort of come up with the best parts of those classes for this new thing I've called the bass vault. So that's what I thought I'd talk a little bit about today in terms of my approach to teaching and what's involved in that. Let me just keep an eye on the chat here. Oh, Mike as well. Hello, Mike. Yeah, he's great stuff saying. So glad you got it working. Yeah, sorry about the delay there. Yeah, so in particular, the listening club class, for me, I found resonated with people quite a lot, because the idea of that, and it's kind of morphed into the bass vault now, is about sort of learning songs at a deeper level. So understanding what you're playing. So not just learning a bass line, learning it parrot fashion, if you will, kind of learning what all the notes are and where they are on the bass, and kind of being a bit stuck. It's about kind of pulling apart songs and excuse me, really learning them at a much deeper level, learning all the different factors involved, like the harmony and the form, the structure, all these kind of things. And I think what that does is it allows people to feel a little bit freer, to open up their playing, if you will. So, I mean, one of the main questions I get asked when I maybe give a one-to-one lesson is, people often come to me and say, oh, I really enjoy playing this particular track, but I want to stretch out over it. I want to kind of embellish the line a bit, maybe put some fills in and that kind of thing, and I feel a little bit constrained. So can you help me with branching out and sort of opening up my playing a little bit? So that I find is one of the main things that we want to do when we're learning the bass. We want to kind of expand what we're doing and kind of explore a bit more on the instrument. So what I like to try and do with this bass vault thing is that the whole premise of the bass vault is that I create these transcriptions. So that's kind of the name suggests, as a vault of transcriptions which I'm sharing with you. But it's a lot more than that. We're using these transcriptions by the greatest bass players around, but we're using them whilst we're learning music. And I think that's an important thing to talk about today, is that it's not just bass lessons. This is kind of music lessons. I think it's important to think, well, I want to learn my instrument, but I need to learn music. I need to learn more about music in order to be able to kind of come at the bass and have an overall picture of what's going on in this whole song, not just my notes, but I want to know what everyone else is doing and where I fit in it. And if I was to stretch out, I want to make sure that everything sounds right. It's kind of as simple as that. I want to make sure that I'm playing things that are in the right key, in the right, playing the right chord tones, everything. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. So I'm using transcriptions, but it's to get, to learn music at a deeper level. So, for example, the first thing we might look at when we're looking at a song is what we call the form. So that's literally the structure of the song. So whether we're looking at, is this an intro, double verse, chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, double chorus out, or is it something else? So we need to have an overview of what the song's doing to start with before we even start. We also need to know a little bit about, what's the key of the song, and is this a major? Is this based on major harmony, or is this minor? And again, we're going to get further and further into how can I play over this song, and how can I kind of do my job as the bass player and support the other musicians in the right way. So we'd look at the what we call the harmony. So we'd break down the harmony of the song. An important thing that we often look at is things like diatonic harmony. So for anyone that's not heard of that word or that expression, diatonic, what it means is we have, like, if you imagine a home key, so we might be in C major, for example, and you can actually create chords. So if you have a chord sequence, if we're using diatonic harmony, we're creating chords that we're going to use for this song, which are only based on songs that only appear in the C major scale. So we call it diatonic harmony. And by learning that, you can get more of an idea of what the chords are likely to be when you're learning a song. So let me give you an example. So, for example, we're in something that's in, I don't know, let's say G major, and that you sort of clock that the bass line goes G, and it goes up to E, and then it goes down to A, and then it goes to D. It keeps going around those chords. one of the first things we do is we give them numbers. So we would say, instead of saying G up to E, A, D, G, we would give them numbers. We would say 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. So we've actually numbered the chords because of what notes they are in the scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to the root. The eighth note is the root again. So this would be a 1, 6, 2, 5. So you could be doing that, and you've learnt this bass line. You think, okay, I've got it down. I can groove away on those notes, but I want to do something more with it than just the root note. So what do I do? So by learning kind of diatonic harmony and knowing what the chords might be, we can get more of an idea of what we could do. So, for example, the first chord, if we're in a major key, would be a major chord. When we get to the E, the 6, we know that's going to be a minor chord. The 2 will also be a minor. And then the 5 would be like a major, like a dominant 7. It's like a major chord with a flattened 7th on the top. So we learn all this stuff in my lessons. It's kind of like what we're trying to do is arm ourselves with some information so that when we're learning songs, we get an idea of what we could do with them. If I want to stretch out, this kind of thing. So we're starting to outline the harmony more. And even before I've learned the song, I've got more of an idea of what I could do with this song. And also, what that's going to do is that's going to really, really, really help me when I'm picking up the bass line. It's going to make me pick up bass lines quicker and quicker and quicker, because my ear is going, when I get to that 6 chord, for example, my ear's listening for notes from the minor chord. So it's an important thing to do, really, to sort of get an idea of what might be coming. So I kind of do that a lot in these lessons. So I'll just take 2 seconds to look at the chat here. Hope you don't mind. We've got Bob Kidd. Hello, Bob. Nice to see you. He's a bass vault student. Oh, great stuff. Yeah, recommending it. Yeah. Oh, and Trainer's a Hamilton fan. Oh, great to have you here. And someone who's called themselves Harmony Worship. He's talking about, have you heard of Matt Ramsey? I haven't actually. His style is not something I've heard with others. I would ask your quick thoughts on his methods. Oh, I'll have to look him up. Matt Ramsey. I don't know him. I'll check that out. But yeah, thanks for those questions. So that's the first thing we do, is we look at the form and the harmony of the song and kind of get an idea of what chords are we looking at here. So on the subject of chords, we would look at the chord tones. So if you imagine a keyboard player who's outlining all these notes all at once, then when they play a chord, they play multiple notes at once. We need to learn and understand what those individual notes are in those chords. We call those the chord tones. And then you've got more of an idea of what, like what I just played there is kind of, you've got more of an idea of how to outline chords correctly, and and how to sort of be a useful bass player in terms of underpinning the rest of the band, and not just playing maybe roots and fifths and octaves, but maybe it's being a little bit more helpful in terms of the harmony. A really great bass player, you could remove a chordal instrument and hopefully still hear that chord structure going on, so that's a big part of what we're doing here. We're not just learning songs, we're actually sort of stripping them apart and learning what's in them. Another thing we'll do is we'll work. I've got a real thing about, having played in shows all the time, I've got a real big thing about efficiency, what I call efficiency. So for example, the most efficient way to play a line, not only just the shapes that we're playing on the instrument, but what I call efficient shifting. Where at what point will I shift to another position to do it smoothly? Like, we're kind of trying to sound professional and smooth. So we look a lot about not just, is that a B? That note, the next note's a B. Moving on. No, we're not going to do that. We're actually going to, does the B sound best here, or does it sound best here, kind of warmer, or does it sound best there or there because of what I'm going to play next and before? We're trying to be smooth players, and all these transitions are so important. So that's something we spend a lot of time on in the lessons I do. And how to physically play the bass line smoothly is one of the things I've made little notes on here. So yes, that's the first thing. Yeah, another thing that we'll touch on in the classes, it's not imperative, but is we'll look at reading. So it's not like a reading class, and it's not something that you have to do, but by sort of, again, looking at the charts, there's always tab there as well to help you. But by looking at the charts, we can start to understand complicated rhythms a little bit by looking at the rhythms on the page and kind of stripping things down. And I sort of pride myself on writing these charts properly in a nice sort of digestible way. And with that, we can actually start to to learn to read music a little bit better and understand the rhythms we're doing and where things are landing in the beat, by doing that. So it's not. I wouldn't say this is something I ram down everyone's throat like you've got to learn to read, but it doesn't really helps actually to sort of have to see it on the page and to get an overview. And after a while, you start to sort of see common threads. That's where I'm going with this as well. Um, by looking at the playing of the greatest bass players. So recently we've been looking at Sean Hurley, absolutely amazing bass player on the west coast of America. Played on loads of stuff. I'm a big John Mayer fan. So he's played on some of his more up to date records. We've looked at Pino Palladino. We did a week or two on Toto music. So we're looking at Mike Porcaro and David Hungate. And what's interesting by looking at all of these different players, in different genres and different bands, but you start to see common threads in their playing, and you start to think, oh, hang on a minute, there's a reason why these guys and girls are the best at what they do, and there's common threads in the way they play, and we can learn from that. So there's something really great about grabbing transcriptions of great players and what they've done with songs, and especially when you look at the chords and then look at what they did with them underneath. And I find it fascinating to, who better than to teach us than Pino Palladino, for example, or Marcus Miller. You want to learn slap? Well, let's check out what Marcus does. So I find that quite an exciting thing to do. And one thing I would mention is that the exciting thing about doing this bass vault thing is that, for example, some of these, obviously a lot of these players, we're going to want to revisit them a few times. So say we were to look at Marcus Miller's playing, we might do a couple of transcriptions of his over a couple of weeks. We might revisit him in 6 months or a year, but I'll always do fresh songs, do new songs. So you'll be adding to your vault of songs on your computer that you've got transcriptions of, and you start to build a big library of stuff across all the different players. Then, like I say, the common threads thing across these fantastic players is really evident when you start to look at what they're up to. So I thought what might be quite cool to do today is maybe just have a quick look at the sort of thing that we would look at in my classes. I thought I picked a song and I thought I'd show you. One thing I've got to get used to with the YouTube thing here is I'm used to Zoom and I know how to share screens and audio, and I'm pretty slick on Zoom, but YouTube's a little bit different. I think I can only share the audio from a browser window. I can't share it from like Apple Music, for example. So I've had to do a few workarounds. But I thought I'd show you a song. So just double check. Sammy Massey's here. Hi, Sammy. Great to see you. Oh yeah, he plays for Kirk Franklin. Ah, fantastic. Great stuff. I'm gonna have to check him out after this. We've got Perry from LA. Nice to see you. And hello from Detroit as well. We've got Too Bad bassist. Nice one. Oh, great to have you here. So what I thought I'd show you today is a song by a band I love called John Cleary and the Absolute Monster Gentlemen, which is an amazing name for a band. The bass player is a guy called Cornell C. Williams. Is the grooviest guy ever. Really deep bass sound. It just sounds incredible. So, and I just love the whole, the Absolute Monster Gentlemen. They sound fantastic. There's actually the self-titled album, John Cleary and the Absolute Monster Gentlemen, is a must. You must get hold of that and just check out the bass playing, check out the drumming. The production's fantastic. So I can't recommend that enough. So what I'll do is I think what I can do is I can just share a window to start with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up, let me just cancel that. Hang on. I've got a few windows open here. So I'm going to bring up, I've got what's called an audio player, and I'm going to play a bit of this song. Yeah, I found it. Here we go. So I'll just give you a few seconds of this song. You get an idea of what we're talking about. Hopefully you can see and hear this. And this is kind of how it sounds. Is it going to work? No, I'm doing that. It's not pressing play. Oh, I tell you what I need to do. It's this one. There we go. Just answering the chat there. I'm just going to pause that for a second. Now, can you maybe in the chat, Oh yeah, he's saying no audio. Let me do this again. Now I've got to press. Let me just stop sharing. Oh, it's always the way, isn't it? Now window. Now I press that window. It's saying share a tab instead. Oh, that's annoying, isn't it? So hang on a minute. Chrome tab. Oh, I see. One of the tabs. Maybe I open it here. Time stretch audio player. Let me see if I can do this again. Hold the phone. We're almost there. Time stretch audio player. See if I can bring it back up. Yeah, here we go. Now I think I might be able to just do that again. There we go. So if I do that, now it's telling me to share a tab. So give me a second. Oh, there we go. That one. Yeah, and you read about in the Sunday papers. Thought I was getting over. Everybody takes a meeting too. But to my surprise, my slides on. Okay. Now let me press stop. Oh, not that one. This one. Now, there we go. I tried to share sound. I don't know if it worked. Hopefully I'm back in business. So could you hear that at all? I don't think the sharing is amazing on this YouTube live thing. It's much easier on Zoom. But yeah, so anyway, whether I don't know, I'm hoping you heard that. So what I'll do next is, oh, you heard part of it. Maybe it was buffering a little bit. So what we'll do now is I'll show you the transcription here. Now I think I can just bear that. So hopefully you can see that transcription and still hear me. Hopefully, let me know if you can't hear me. Yeah. I'm sharing the picture of that transcription, but hopefully you can still hear me talk. So yeah, so one thing I would talk about here, for example, we're looking at this really cool line. It starts with a kind of double stops thing. So for example, we're going to start by hitting some G's here. Oh great, you can hear me and see me. Fantastic. Right, so we've got like, it does this fantastic kind of double stop thing. Like this kind of thing. You know, you often see bass players do this double stop thing where you'll play on the D string, you'll play something with your first finger, and then on the G string, you'll play with the second finger 1 fret higher. So a little diagonal line. We call that like a sort of a tritone shape because it's literally 3 tones apart. But now this is a kind of a real case in point, for example. We've got this fantastic thing. It's doing that quite a few times. And we could learn that and move on. But sometimes it's really nice to learn, well, what am I playing there? You know, what are these notes? So what I've done here is I've put the chords over the top. So one thing we'll often do in these classes I do is we'll try to learn things as little 3-note chords as well. And I think that's a really important part of understanding harmony. As bass players, we can be quite a lonely experience, you know, to sort of be playing these bass lines at home and you kind of got no sense of, you know, what you're underpinning, what are the chords above. So it's quite nice to sort of learn chords. So we'll do this in the classes. So I'm just kind of flying through with a slightly quicker version this evening, but we play a G minor 7. I play the root, the 7th note, the minor 7, and then the minor 3rd up the top. So, and then we'd go to a C7, which is the root 3rd and the dominant 7. So we'd have this sound, you know, you can hear the harmony there. It's much more useful as you know, to learn this through learning what these chords are. So what's interesting here is if I look at this last one, the C7. What if you lose the C and just play the 3rd and the 7th? That's the final little pairing that it gets to. So what he's actually doing is to start with, he's playing a root, a G, but for the C7, he's actually sliding up chromatically from 2 frets lower up to that shape we've just learned. You know this. So he's actually going from the D up to what's that, A flat, until he gets to the shape that we've learned, this C7 shape. So it's kind of interesting to hear. We can hear, oh, that's what the chords are doing, you know, this sort of thing. So we're going, and then using the shape, and we finally get to that C. So it's just kind of nice to know, well, what we're doing there. Oh, there we go. Yeah, Adam S is saying, yeah, Cheating on You. That's a great tune, isn't it? So yeah, that's a kind of that's where we'd start with that. We'd learn what are these chords, and then finally it does that a couple of times, and then it finally goes G minor 7, and then it goes to a D7. You can kind of hear the notes there, the root, third, and the dominant 7. And then we're into the kind of the bass line. So here, for example, we'd have, and then we've got this kind of, it's getting us into the bass line. This sort of thing. It's kind of a variation on that. So what we do in these lessons, for example, is we wouldn't just learn, the bass line. Maybe I'll come out of share for a second. There we go, so you can see a bit clearer. But we'd actually think, well, what's this based on? So this actual verse section is based on a minor sound. So we'd think, I can hear sort of lots of pentatonic vocabulary going on. So we'd have a little think about, what the different ways that we can play minor pentatonic. So we're in G. So I'd go 1, I'd go to the 4 with my little finger, then move up a string, 1 and 3, then up another string, 1 and 3. So that's your kind of go-to shape for minor pentatonics, but it's quite nice to sort of learn a few different other shapes. So for example, you could go third finger on the root, then cross to 1, then shift it up 2 frets and do a 1 and 3 and 1 and 3. So rather than 1 4. I don't always love 1s and 1 to 4, because especially when you're kind of down low here, it's kind of quite a stretch. So we can sometimes replace it with a 3 up to 1 and then move. What's quite useful about knowing more than one shape for different things is you can kind of mix and match or slot them together. 1 4 1 3 1 3. I finished on that 3, so I could keep going. I know that I can do a 3 up to 1, move it up. And you can even learn different ways of going up the bass in different ways. It's great to. One thing I talk about a lot in the lessons is trying to move horizontally rather than vertically, for example. So rather than kind of exhaust all my options and then have to sort of painfully crawl up the bass, I try and maybe do some of the heavy lifting early on the E string, and then I'm here and I can go 3 1, and it just sort of makes life a bit easier once you get up high. So this is all the kind of things that we look at. We would look at not just this bass line, but the expanded vocabulary that you could use if you wanted to do a little bit more with this bass line. So rather than go this sort of thing, you could be just simple things, but I've expanded the pentatonic line, this kind of thing. Just having learnt where all the G minor pentatonics are on the instrument, you've got a few more options of just sounding a bit more interesting. So that's the sort of thing we do, really. We look at the chords, the chord tones, learn it with chords up high. Then what I might do is, for example, another thing, I'll show you the chart again, but we'll revisit it again. I've got to keep an eye on this chat. Now I've got to share the window. That's the one. We'll then maybe, this is something I'll come back to quite a lot. We'll revisit the bass line and make sure that we're playing the note lengths right. This is a huge thing in sounding kind of professional, is to sort of look at the note lengths themselves and positioning, like I said earlier on about where you might play notes. If you look at, for example, verse 1 there, at the first bar, there's a dot underneath that last note. Well, that means to play it in a kind of staccato way, So, for example, you just got to think a little bit deeper about how you're presenting your bass playing and trying to make it sound solid and professional. The note lengths are just an enormous part of that. So, we'd be, and I want to really stop it dead on beat 1 of the next bar. So 1 2 and stop. And there's even on that third bar along, which is bar 11, the first note of that bar is nice and short. So we would look at in depth about how am I going to play this? How am I going to mute that note? Which finger am I going to use to mute it, to stop it dead and make it sound really tight? I always kind of think of let me just share again. I always think of my bass playing as a kind of very much a hands-on instrument rather than a hands-off thing. I think that's kind of one of the things that separates the men from the boys, or whatever you want to call it. It's like when you start off on the instrument, there's a propensity to play notes and kind of get off the instrument, and we're like, and you can hear all this going on, you can hear all this noise, and we kind of, as you get more comfortable with the instrument, you find yourself physically staying on the bass a lot more. So you notice I'm like, laying my hands quite flat on the strings, and often I think of it more as a hands-on thing, and I just get out the way for the odd note, and there's a real kind of an instinct, or whatever you want to call it, kind of a muscle memory now, where I'll play a note. I might play with my first finger with the plucking hand, and immediately, if I want short notes, the second finger comes over and mutes it immediately. It seems to be like a reflex now. If I want to do something short, and equally, I would get my fingers off with the fretting hand, and then they would come back to stop the notes. There's a sort of a double whammy of muting, So all that kind of thing makes us sound more in control of the instrument, really. That's kind of where I'm going with this. I've got to make sure I keep reading the chat. Yeah, excuse me, I just started staring off to the side here. But yeah, so yeah, a good question here from Harmony Worship. Beginner bass here. Do we normally remove the fifth when we do chords in bass? That's a very good question, actually. What you tend to, because we're so limited in the amount of notes that we can play when we're doing chords, it's more often than not just three, really. You kind of try and pick the most interesting ones. So, for example, a fifth in a straightforward major chord and a straightforward minor chord is the same. It's a perfect fifth. So it doesn't really change. So it's not giving much flavor. So whereas the third changes between major and minor, and often the seventh gives an indication of the flavor of the chord. So often when we don't have many notes at our disposal, or fingers, in strings, we'll use the first, third, and seventh. It's basically whatever's the most interesting part of the chord that gives it its flavor, we'll try and make a thing of. And an exception might be you get the odd thing like a half diminished chord, for example. And what's interesting about that chord is the fifth's been flattened, so we'll play that one in a 3-note chord because it gives flavor. But that's a really good question, because we use roots and fifths a lot down here, but when we're playing regular bass lines, but when we're trying to do chords and give an indication of harmony, we're often we'll lose the fifth and hit lots of thirds and sevenths, that kind of thing. Oh yes, Jason's here. Hello, Jason. Great to see you. Just someone who's just joined up to the Bass Vault. Looking forward to seeing. Yeah, it'd be good to see you. It's tomorrow, isn't it? Yeah, great to have you there. Yeah, nice one. Cool. So yeah, so that's a few of the things that we'll look at in the classes. We'll look at transcriptions, but it's not like, I can't emphasize enough. It's not just about this is where you play that note, this is where you play that note. Right, you're on your own. It's like, what's going on with this bass line? What's the bass player doing? And it's just so great to see. I've just used Pino Palladino a lot as examples, but Sean Hurley's similar. It's often they're using vocabulary that we all know, but they're just so inventive with it. And it's just, I think it's so great to look at a transcription of what, exactly note for note what someone's played. And from that, you can just go, that's amazing. It sounded so interesting. And that was mainly triads, or, that was kind of a pentatonic thing, but he just, moved the order of the notes around and it sounded so hip, So it's just great to learn, get deeper and deeper into, what people are doing when they're doing it, it's amazing what you can do with the pentatonic scale, so that's great to do. So one of the things I wanted to emphasize about what I'm doing with these classes as well is not only do you get a transcription, but I create these backing tracks these days. It's a fantastic time, really, with AI. You can use it. I use Logic myself, but there's Moises and various other apps that you can use. And what I'll do is I'll grab an MP3 of whichever track we're looking at, and I'll create usually 5 versions of that track. So you have the original version with the bass removed, the original version bass removed and often about 10% slower. And then also I'll make bass heavy versions. So you have bass heavy and then bass heavy 10% slower, or sometimes 8% slower, depending on the original speed. But they're really useful for learning. Like, you might want to just start with a bass heavy version just to hear what someone's doing and really get that line down. And then when you feel a bit more confident, you might do it at the slightly faster version. And then you might go, okay, now I'm going to try it without the bass and I'm going to be the bass player. So it's a fantastic time for, practicing and creating these tracks. So I always do that. I'll make a transcription and I'll create all these backing tracks, and they all get provided each week. The other thing I like to do, because we're doing deep dives into well-known players, is I create playlists for people to check out. So like I say, we did Toto the other day, and so I created a playlist which highlighted some of their best tracks, but also highlighted which bass players were on them. So you had a guy called David Hungate in the early days play with them, and then it was Mike Porcaro after that. And in later years, when Mike sadly died, actually, Lee Sklar did some some live touring with them, and Nathan East as well. So you've got some great players. So I would make a playlist for you to check out. And that's a really great way to get into an artist. And I've done it for bands like Toto, or artists, or Pino Palladino, whoever it might be. Did a great Marcus Miller one last term as well. So that's quite a fun thing. The other thing I thought I might do is give you a little kind of behind closed doors view of this thing called Circle. So the whole thing of my bass folk classes, they have to be hosted somewhere, and there's lots of information and lots of stuff to give you. So there's a community app called Circle, which I've signed up to, and I thought I'd share that with you now and give you a little walkthrough. So yeah, I've got it here now. Let me see if I can do a bit better at sharing the screen. Yeah, here we go. So hopefully you can see that. So yeah, once when you first, for example, get a link to come and have a look at this, you'll get a link to the About page, and that's here. So that will be, it's a big goofy video of me saying hello and what you'll get. Lots of information about what's provided at these classes, the price, all that kind of thing. I'm providing 12-week semesters at the moment. I'm kind of doing it almost like 3 semesters a year to give people a bit of a break and time to digest the stuff. $360 for a 12-week semester, or $120 in 3 monthly installments, which is a bit of an easier way to pay for that. Lots of information about the actual classes themselves, and then you can click there to pay. That takes you through a paywall where you can pay. But what's interesting is once you've joined this thing, it opens up these areas that you can have a look at. So, for example, you've got a welcome page. Again, some information about what you'll get when you join up. The general discussion area here is essentially a forum. So we can talk to each other. This is just some stuff from last term. And we could talk about who we've been looking at recently. And also, you can do things like you can actually upload some audio or video of your own playing. And that way, I'll feedback on that, and also other members will feedback as well. Which is, I would really stress that it's a really kind of positive, supportive environment. This kind of circle environment. It's a little private, world, and people are all on the same kind of journey, and they're all very sort of supportive of each other. So you might find it's a nice thing to do, is to upload your playing. This is where I'm at the moment, and people feedback. The next thing that we'll do is you've got your schedule. That's where you get your Zoom links. Each week you click on the relevant week, and then there's a Zoom link in there. And then importantly, if you miss a class, you've got the this what's called the seminar archive. So you would see all the videos of the last few weeks here, and you could, if you missed a class, or sometimes you might just want to revisit a class and double check what was said or go over something again. So a really important part of it is that you can have a little look at what went on there. And the last one is just the announce section. So, for example, I've just put up the first half of next term's Zoom links are now available, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a great app actually, and that's actually sharing. That's where I would upload the transcriptions and all the backing tracks and links to playlists. In fact, I wonder if I'll give you another little example here. I go back to if we look at this week, we were looking at Toto here. Each video, you've got a zip file of the transcription and all the backing tracks, and then just a few interesting things that I thought I'd share with people. There's this is Jeff Porcaro, the most fantastic drummer ever, who played with Toto, and this is a part of his instructional video, which I just thought was fascinating, even as bass players, to check out. And a bit of Bernard Purdy doing his shuffle as well. The Bo Diddley, we're kind of looking at his rhythm that's involved in this track as well. And then, I was sharing that John Cleary stuff. And there's a YouTube video of Toto playing Rosanna. So it's, you get a lot of stuff that you can check out. And it's what I really like about doing this is it's suddenly structuring learning the bass a lot more. It's not that kind of meandering, what shall I do? There's something every week that I will share with you, and you've got something to really get your teeth stuck into. And like I say, you're creating a kind of library of stuff um, that you can have on your computer. And when you want to practice, it's more inspiring to just work on actual tracks. Um, I always find that, especially as bass, by very definition, is an instrument to support other musicians. It's not. I don't particularly enjoy just playing bass on my own. Really, I'm a bass player's bass player. I like playing, under other instruments doing their thing. So this whole thing of transcriptions and tracks with the bass removed is wonderful. And there's nothing better than clocking the greats. I mean, for example, this next term we're going to have a look at Paul McCartney. It's a long time coming, but we're going to have a good look at maybe a good 3 weeks on Paul McCartney stuff, and I'm going to have a look at some James Jamerson, and also I take sort of requests from the floor, as it were. So like if you're particularly into a certain thing, just you'd get in touch and say, look, can we look at this? And that's always I welcome that kind of thing. So yeah, so I'll just keep double checking the chat here. Oh, Jason's saying he's been revisiting some Jameson over the weekend. Yeah. He's saying I still find his approach to playing root fifths and octaves, particularly how he rolls and skips between strings. Yeah, I see. Yeah, you're getting into that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean that's something we'll look at. That kind of the techniques that he used, like the kind of what we call raking. So raking across the strings, that kind of thing. Oh, you find it? Yeah, you're saying you find it challenging. Yeah. That's definitely something I get into. I'll stand up here and shove my chubby fingers near the camera, and you can see what I'm doing, and we kind of get into the weeds with all that stuff. Um, yeah. So someone's saying, yeah, it looks helpful and interesting. Yeah, unfortunately, don't have 120 spare a month at the moment. So yeah, just so you know, it's $120. So that's about £90 at the moment, and that's 3 of those payments is what you pay for the full term. And like I say, it's sort of 12-week batches over the whole year. So it's kind of what I'm trying to do. When I did the live class thing for SBL, it was like all year, 52 weeks, and it was quite full on, not only for me, but also for the people to take it on board and kind of digest all this stuff. So I thought it might make more sense to do 3 terms or semesters, and then kind of make them 12 weeks each, have a bit of a half term in the middle. So we might do 5 or 6 weeks, have 1 or 2 weeks off, do a bit more, and then have a little holiday, kind of basically almost like schools, kind of just sort of make it 36 weeks over the year. So you'd be paying $360 for a 12-week semester, but probably, it wouldn't be a few more weeks until the next one starts as well. So it's kind of about as low as I can do it with all the costs involved and that kind of thing, and VAT and circle costs and blah, 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 all the stuff. But it's significantly less than you would pay for a one-to-one. And I guess my thinking here is that you get a lot of, serious stuff to get your teeth stuck into. And, you could dip in for a term and then a semester. I keep calling it a term, which is what we say in the UK, but you could dip in for a semester, then have a little break, come back another time, So yeah, it's kind of, it's kind of cool. Oh, yeah, I'm just reading from Wilco here. He's saying, hi, Ian. Are the class recordings of previous semesters also accessible for members signing up to the current semester? So I could access the Toto class recordings, for instance. That's something I've got to look at, actually, because obviously that's people have paid for the previous term, and new people won't have done that. So that's because something that may not be available, but it's something we're going to look into. It's something we thought about today, actually. If someone joins today, they haven't paid for the last term or semester. So it wouldn't be fair really on the people that did pay for that. So it's something what I might end up doing at the end of each semester is sending people links to all the recordings, and then removing the last term from the Circle website, just for sort of fairness reasons, really. Oh yeah, and Sammy's saying, how long do we have access for the videos after the course ends after 12 weeks? That's another good question. So for example, this particular one now, we start tomorrow, so towards the end of April. It's a 12-week semester, and then there's a summer holiday of about 6 weeks, I think it is. And I think the next term or semester will start in September. So if you paid for this one in April now, you'd have access to all the catch-up recordings for the entire semester and the holiday after that, if you will. So probably about 4 months worth, you'd have access to it. And then when we get to September, we'd sort of start afresh. Anyone who's sort of rolls on to another term continues to get access to everything. But what it might end up being is that you get sent private links to the previous term stuff that you can access yourself. And I might have to remove previous terms off Circle just for fairness reasons, really, because people have paid for some terms and some haven't for others. Oh, yes, and Mike's saying here, what level is the vault aimed at? So beginner, intermediate, or advanced? So that's again another great question. It's something we talk about on the about page on the circle thing. And what I would say is I would call it anything from about a confident beginner upwards. So someone who's, you know, they know their instrument, they know their notes, they've got a basic technique together, and are sort of like ready to go. They're not kind of at the beginner stage. They kind of finished the beginner stage and then they now want to go somewhere. So I would say confident beginners, really intermediate is the bulk of it, and maybe sometimes we'll notch into sort of lower advanced stuff. So it's that sort of mid-range. If you think of intermediate and slightly stretching to either category, either side, that's where it's at. But one thing I'm going to do actually is I've already I've filmed an entire foundations based course based on some stuff that keeps coming back to me, some important stuff, this chord tone stuff we've talked about. And I'm going to release that for free on YouTube over the summer. And that'll be, like a foundations level thing. It's about 25 lessons, actually. Each one's about 10 minutes. And in September, I'm going to be doing what's called the bass vault foundations class as well. So that'll be more for sort of people at the beginning stage of their playing. And the idea of that will be my own course has got tracks I've created to illustrate what you're learning. But obviously, people want to start to learn songs they know. So what I'll be with the live classes will be learning real world music, stuff that but that's slightly aimed more at the somewhat at the earlier stage of their learning. So there'll be two types of classes from September. There'll be the bass vaults foundations, and then the bass vault. And also, I'm going to also add another time slot in as well, because at the moment they're at 3 p.m. on a Monday here in the UK, which kind of suits sort of the middle of the map, if you will, which is kind of like, it's sort of morning time for the East Coast of America, and going through to sort of evening-ish in the middle of Europe. But so people the other side, the sides of the map, if you will, are not getting covered. So I'm going to do sort of like a 9 p.m. Slot on another day, maybe a Tuesday, and what that does is it makes it kind of lunchtime-ish on the West Coast of America, moving across the time zones to sort of early evening on the East Coast. And also it covers people like in New Zealand, it'd be like first thing in the morning the next day for them, sort of 9 a.m. So that will be from September as well. So at the moment I'm doing this one class, but by September, we're going to do 4. It's going to be 2 different types of classes at 2 different times. So hopefully there'll be something to suit wherever you're at and wherever you're living. Yeah, to start with, I've just sort of stuck with the formula that I've been working on recently, which has been really fun, So yeah, so let me just double check any other stuff in the chat here. So yes, we've done the levels, but someone called Cleet here. Is it Cleet Albertson saying nothing to do with the conversation right now, but man, I love the BB bass. Carry on, cool. Yeah, I love it too. Actually, it's I had it a little while, and the first thing I did was put the Nordstrand these Nordstrand pickups in. I had a sort of happy accident with these. Actually, I ordered a straightforward PJ setup, which was their straightforward kind of standard P, and the SE version of their back pickup here, the J pickup. But the guy from the shop accidentally sent me the vintage voiced front pickup, this P pickup, and I love it. I really like how. I mean, if I turn off that back pickup now completely. It's just lovely and warm and still quite articulate, but it's not kind of harsh. I put what's it called? Seymour Duncan, is it the quarter pounder or something? I think I put that in a bass years ago, and I think it can suit some basses, but it sounded kind of harsh in that bass. But this is kind of warm sounding and just seems to suit these Yamahas are very articulate, and it's maple and mahogany and lots of really clear sounding woods. So that slightly more mellow pickup really suits it. So yeah, I really like it. It's nice and it's not too heavy. It's built like a tank, and like masses of bolts and stuff at the back here, and these 45-degree angle ones here really pulls the neck in tight. And yeah, you've got like 45-degree angles for if you do through stringing and all that stuff. But yeah, I really like it. Use it more and more now, actually. Um, Oh, the reason I so yeah, Florian, oh, nice to see. The reason I changed them out actually is just because the standard ones were actually fine, but they're single coil. So the P pickup by definition, I don't know if I can't you can't quite see it, it is a sort of hum canceller. That's the idea of a P pickup, is that you've split it in two, and the two hum cancel. But the back pickup is a was a single coil when it comes standard. So this is actually a hum cancelling version. So it's like two coil. It's a bit like, if you imagine that pickup, if you put both of them right next to each other, that's what you've got here. You've got a coil that goes under the bottom two strings and another coil that goes over under the top two strings, and they hum cancel. So if I move to the back pickup, you don't get too much buzz. It's a little bit buzzy here with lights and all the stuff, but yeah. And I just, it was just a bit of an upgrade, really. But yeah, yeah, that's it. Adam's saying, I heard that the J has hum. It's not like a bad hum, or like, oh, that's faulty. It's just by definition, it's a single coil pickup, so it's always going to pick up the lights. Um, so yeah, Harry's saying, yeah, thanks for the live Q&A. He plays a bit of regional theatre gigs. Oh, cool. Any advice for players trying to break into the off West End kind of West End scene? Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a great question. I don't mind answering that at all. I mean, you're probably doing all the right things. Really, there's sort of little stages, isn't there, with the kind of West End stuff, where you often start with touring productions slightly further out of town, and then you'll work your way into town. And essentially, it's the kind of relationships and sort of yeah, that you make with people. For example, to start with, you would sit in, if you wanted to, right at the beginning, you might sit in with someone who's doing a touring show and sit with them, and then get an idea of what they're up to. And then if they need someone to cover one night, you might get an opportunity to help them, and then slowly start to find out who the names are of people doing stuff in the West End, and then sort of politely get in touch, and see if you can come and sit in with them, kind of tentatively to start with. And then often, things change. Like at the moment, I'm doing Hamilton, and I've probably got about between 6 and 8 people that know the pad, that will come in depth for me, but that their lives are changing. That sometimes someone might get a show of their own, so suddenly they're not available to cover anymore. Or they might go on tour. So you find your numbers dwindle, and then you look around yourself for some new people to come and cover. So it's a slightly evolving thing. And once you start to do a good job, then the fixers, who are like the agents for musicians in town, will hear who's done a good job, and then they might ask you to do your own touring show. And then after a while, you might get asked to do some depping in town, and it's all kind of stepping stones. It's sort of meeting people and getting slightly further and further towards the West End gigs, really. And I started depping on, the very first thing I did was Mamma Mia in London, and I'd done a load of poppy stuff before that, so I kind of came, and I didn't really know the protocol for how you did West End shows, so I kind of played quite busy and kind of fun. I made it kind of fun, and people liked it. And the next minute, I got a gig doing Daddy Cool, which is all the music of Boney M, which is loads of fun. It only ran 6 months, but it was great fun. And then after that, I moved on to various other shows. Fame I did, and then Hairspray, Sister Act. In fact, yeah, I did Sister Act 10, 15 years ago. But the show I'm about to do, Hercules, the musical supervisor in America remembered me from the cast album of Sister Act back in the day, and he's asked for me to do Hercules. So it's kind of, who you meet and who you get to know. Often it's the relationships with MDs and drummers that get you the work, really, as a bass player, going in those circles. Drummers, MDs obviously will ask for who they want. They often ask for their favorite drummer first, and then they'll liaise with the drummer, say, what bass players do you like? And so often, yeah, you can get an in with an MD or an in with a drummer. And a lot of my work has crossed over, moving show to show with the drummer I know or an MD I know. It seems to be that way. Yeah, we've got Ben Stiller here. Since you're a musician, what is your opinion on the party scene? Heroin, the 27 Club, etc. What's your opinion on? Oh, blimey, this is a bit random. I'm not sure I know what to what to say to that one. Who else? Hope you're really enjoying your bass lessons. Want to get more into session work? Do you have any advice on a route to take to start offering myself out, or as a session? Well, the session stuff is is a hard scene to break. I mean, there's so many, you know, in the old, back in the 80s and 90s, there was an abundance of work, and there's just not as much now. And there's only a few people doing the few sessions that are happening, the bigger ones. Um, maybe there's more kind of maybe singer songwriter stuff, a lot of stuff from home. I mean, I did a remote session the other day. That's more where I get more recording work from. Every so often I'll get something nice, something tasty. I've got a thing next Saturday for Britain's Got Talent. I've got to go to a nice studio to pre-record some stuff for Britain's Got Talent. Every so often you'll get, very rarely I might get to play on a film, but often it's when the few absolute top names that do everything. The last time I did a film was because this chap called Phil Mulford, a fantastic player in London, was doing a Disney Alan Menken one. What's it called? With Under the Sea, Little Mermaid, a new version of Little Mermaid. He had like 4 days, booked in for that, and that was at, I think it was Air Lyndhurst, it's called. And then the next day after that, he had another session starting at Abbey Road for another film. I mean, talk about busy. He does everything. But the first one got extended by a day, so he couldn't do it. So I got the call. So it's quite rare, that you get that, you get that chance to do, for me anyway. And like I say, there's just a few names that do a lot of the very, very top stuff. So that's not the most, I guess, maybe that's not the most encouraging thing to say, but it's not to say there's no session work out there, but I find it's slightly more small scale. It's a lot more recording from home. I'd definitely recommend getting a good recording setup at home. Have a nice preamp pedal and a decent interface. Logic is the main one that most people use, and get yourself sounding great at home, and see if, and maybe that's something you could offer out as well. Because for me, that's I had a session the other week, and it was for some people in New York, and just to be able to do it from home and send it to them. It was the day before I went on holiday. It suddenly came in. My wife's packing the suitcases, and I had 5 short tracks to do for someone's YouTube channel, and I'm just frantically trying to get these tracks done. And then we went to the airport. It was like, oh my god, But it is what it is, But cool. Right. Well, I think that's like I say, if there's I'll have a look. There's quite a few questions come through here in the chat. If I've missed anything, firstly, I do apologise, and secondly, like I say, this video will get featured on my channel, and I'll make sure I go through all the chat and all the questions, and make sure I reply to everything properly. One last question, maybe before I leg it tonight. Tom's just saying here, how do you keep yourself entertained, focused when you're playing the same book every night? It's a great question, actually. I love playing in theatre, but I find that even 2 or 3 week seasons in amateur theatre can be taxing. Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, because I find that I've been doing Hamilton for ages now. I've been doing it before and after the pandemic break of 2 years, and there's no denying that you do get bored of the same songs. Hamilton has got 51 songs in it, so at least there's a massive pad of stuff to get through. But one thing I do, which I think is a really important point to make, is I'll use it for an exercise. It's like a practice session in a way, where if you know the song and you know the notes you're about to play, that side of things is covered. So I'll use it as a time to actually work on my time, especially my time. I do a lot of stuff to click, and every day I'm like listening to that click track, like you wouldn't believe. I'm working on my placement against that click. I'm listening to the drums. I'm working on, oh, this is a shuffle track, so I'm going to try and work on my shuffle. Articulating everything. You're always trying to do the perfect show. I'm not sure there's such a thing as a perfect show. There's always something that you do wrong. So I personally use it as a time to practice and work on these fundamentals that are just so important to sounding kind of professional and heavy. And sometimes there's something nice about knowing the song inside out, because then you can work on other stuff. Sometimes, for example, if you didn't know the song that well, you're just desperately trying to get the chords out or get the notes out, and there's no time to think about anything else. But when you know the music inside out, you can use it as an example, as a time to work on, especially, like I say, time and feel and tone. And, there's quite a bit of double bass in Hamilton. So, you're working on your bowing, trying to make it sound good and, big and in tune. And, you've got this like a practice session every night. And I do find that if I then go to another playing environment where I don't know the music as well, you still bring those things you've worked on in the show, you bring that good time and feel to this other stuff. So even when you're playing stuff you don't know so well, you've worked on those things, and hopefully you're always getting slightly better and slightly tighter, and you're creating a great sound. I mean, I love listening to Sean Hurley talk. I could listen to him all day. His approach to playing the bass is just fantastic, and he's always talking about even a fairly straightforward song. He's thinking about, does that F when I'm playing, does that sound right? Or should I do it up here? You know, a bit out of tune. But he's thinking, do I play it there, or do I play it there for the right tone? So it's that kind of thing. It's having a bit of time and a bit of headspace to work on other bits of your playing. So yeah, that's kind of where I go with it. But I totally get your point, that you can it can get boring. That's why I'm quite excited to move on to Hercules in the next few weeks, actually. So yeah, great stuff. Well, brilliant. Well, I've done just over an hour. Sorry about the false start at the beginning. Hopefully that everyone who wanted to come and see this could. But yeah, great to have you here, and I hope you've enjoyed coming along. If you need any more information, actually, any of the videos on my channel, the more recent ones where I'm playing, transcriptions and stuff, there's lots of information underneath, and there's a link to Circle there and that kind of thing, so you could have a little look. But yeah, thanks for coming along. I'll see if I can end this. Oh yeah, there's a button there, end stream. So I'll say goodbye. Thanks so much. Yeah, take it easy. See you later.